This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
John K. O'Connell, Rockland, Mass.
Okay. How'd you end up living in Rockland?
I lived in Quincy after I got out of the service for about 20 years, and then we bought a house here in 1990.
Could you summarize your childhood life?
I grew up in South Boston until the 3rd grade. We moved to Braintree. I stayed in Braintree until I graduated from high school. And I played soccer, I played baseball, I did wrestling. And then I joined the military in 1968 when the Vietnam War was on.
How did life as a soldier affect your life?
I was a sailor. I was with a unique outfit called the Underwater Demolition Teams, which is the precursor to the Navy SEAL teams. And it's just, it's one of the toughest trainings on the planet, so it's my pride of being in that unit was overwhelming. It's just pretty unique. In fact, the day after Osama bin Laden was killed, I must have got 20 phone calls from my previous teammates and relatives and everything congratulating me because the SEAL teams had killed him. Son of a bitch.
If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think I'd be. My father was a chief of the crash group over at Logan Airport, and I got out of the service. I figured the computers was the up and coming thing, so that's what I got into. I really didn't care for it, and if I did my life over after getting out of the military, I would have been a fireman.
So, does it still affect you today, like in your everyday life?
Yeah, I'm still a jumpy guy. Some people sneak up behind me. Like just today, I drive special needs, and one of the guys came up behind me, and I'm a little jumpy.
Yeah. Why did you join the Navy SEALs?
Just for the challenge. Just there was when I was in boot camp, they showed a film called The Naked Warrior regarding the underwater demolition teams, and they were parachuting, blowing stuff up, and diving. So it seemed like fun. So.
When you were in the military, what was your ranking, and how did you achieve it?
What was my rating?
Ranking, yeah.
I got out as an E4. I kept getting busted. I was in trouble a lot.
Yeah.
So I finally made E4, but I had a propensity for trouble during liberty hours.
What's the first thing you think of when you hear the word Vietnam?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I have a lot of mixed views on that because there's so many guys that gave their lives, like almost 38,000 people, I believe, something like that. And there was a lot of civilians that never served for the country. And as a matter of fact, a lot of them went up to Canada just to get away from it. And then, 10 years later, our government said, it's okay, you can come on back. And I was so ticked off about that. I felt they should have come back on one road and mined the son of a bitch. And that's how I felt. Just, I did my part for the country. You don't get to choose where and when you go. If the country's asking you to go to war, you go to war. That's the way I look at it.
So, what was your happiest memory from the war?
I was not in Vietnam. I served during Vietnam. I was in from 68 to 72, went through SEAL training in 69. And so I was, what was the question again?
What was your happiest memory from...
My happiest memory of being in the Navy?
Yeah.
All the friendships that I developed. I still get Christmas cards from guys that I went through training with, or I was in my platoon.
While you were overseas, what would you say that you miss most?
Oh, your family, your mother or your father, your brothers, sisters, and your friends. You know, just it's quite a when you go away for 6 months at a whack, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Do you regret any of your decisions other than making trouble?
I I don't even regret that. I don't have any regrets, to tell you the truth. I would do the whole thing over again. Just
When you went off to Vietnam, what did you tell your family?
I didn't go to Vietnam.
Or when you went off to?
I served. When I was on the teams, I was with Underwater Demolition Team 22 after graduation from BUDS, which is Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. I went on Team 22, and that was dissolved in 1971, decommissioned, and I went up to UDT 21, which was the very last UDT team, and that became SEAL Team 4. Oh, what was the question again?
What did you tell your family when you went off to Vietnam?
I didn't go off to Nam. I went off to cruises. I did 2 Caribbean cruises, like 4 months at a whack, and then I did a Mediterranean cruise, and I just told them, "See you later, alligator."
While you were on the ships, what were the sleeping conditions like?
Horrendous. On the ships, I was on an LSD, it's called a landing ship dock, which brought in the amphibious tanks and landing craft, and so there wasn't much room for the personnel. So when you slept, it was like 5 guys on a rack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I slept in worse conditions when I was on submarines. It was so tight on the submarine that you couldn't even roll over. You had to either sleep face down or face up. And 95% of the guys slept face up because there wasn't room to roll over. That's how tight the racks were.
What was your mindset when you were on the submarine? Like, were you disoriented?
It was pretty exciting because to be on a sub, it's unique, and we were doing. We had our mini subs on the back, and so we were locking out, swimming out to the mini subs, getting the mini subs, drive them around for a little bit, come back on the sub. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it.
So, was your time like separated, not daytime and night? Was it separated any other way?
I don't understand the question. What's the?
So, like, was it like rec time and then like you're on and then like sleep?
Oh, sometimes you'd be working, 20 hours, and then you just crash and try and catch up on your sleep. Sometimes you'd start work all day and then work until midnight at midnight. Just sometimes you had very, very long days.
So, going back to your childhood, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pilot, and I joined I went to the Navy, and the recruiter said, "Oh, you want to be a pilot? No problem." They were pretty much lying through their teeth. I didn't realize you needed a college degree to be a pilot, and I wasn't a college graduate. This guy just wanted me to sign on a dotted line so he'd get his $200 bonus, so he was talking on his ass. So just don't trust the recruiters.
So, when you were away, what was your darkest memory?
Missing probably Christmas, being away during Christmas, it really ate you up. And when you're a new guy, like before I went Special Forces, I was in a regular Navy, and when you first report to a duty station, the new guy has to do the chow hall, and you have to work washing dishes for like 14-hour days. And I caught that during Christmas. They told me it's Christmas Day. They said I was working days, and they said, "Guess what? You're going on nights, and it's starting tonight." And this is Christmas Eve, so I had to work Christmas Day, Christmas Eve. So I went to bed and cried.
So, what event had the most impact on you during the war?
I remember being over in the Mediterranean, and the country was protesting the war in Vietnam, and there was an article in one of the magazines, and I think it was called the May Day Arrests, and I think they arrested like 60,000 people and put them in a huge stadium in Washington D.C. And I was saying, "Oh my God, my country's going to crap here," because they're all protesting the war. Just blew my mind.
When you got home, did you feel any of that? Like all those protesters, were they like angry? What was the feeling you got?
I hated the protesters. In fact, about 10 years ago, when my son was over in Afghanistan, or Iraq, which I forget which one it was, but they had protesters in Boston. I got a 5-gallon bucket of urine and I threw it on the protesters. That's what I did. I hate them.
So, so you said now that you drive special needs people. How did you get to do that?
I had a brother that was mentally retarded when I was growing up, an older brother, and he passed away the same year I went into service. And after I worked 25 years in the painters union, I was like a plasterer.
Mhm.
I was a drywall finisher. Once I retired, this is what I do. It's a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon. So it's giving back to the community, helping out people that are in need.
So now there's a lot of video games about war. What are your thoughts on those?
Never played one.
So if your grandchild was ever coming to you and considering they were going in the military, what advice would you give them?
I'd say go for it. And just you learn how to show up on time. You learn how to you just learn how to correctly go through life. There's a lot of good things that it does teach you. The hard part is being away from home and being in a combat zone. You could get killed. It's a tough decision to make. But I would, if one of my grandsons was interested in it, I'd say go for it. Be the best you can.
So, when you were away, were you like scared?
No, because I was in a combat zone. I was on cruises, so I wasn't scared at all.
Did you have any friends that were in the combat zone?
Yes, like most of my class went to Vietnam, and the first guy, Kerry Heinrich, he got hit by a mine, and he had 26 holes in him from his waist on down. And I went to visit him at Norfolk Hospital, and he said, "Okie, you got to go over there. It's the ultimate game." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "It's the ultimate game. Either you get them or they get you." And I thought it was kind of a sick viewpoint, but he recovered fine. They weren't big holes; they were just small holes from a mine. But he had 26 of them. He ended up being a career SEAL. He did 20 years.
Was that ever an option for you? Did you ever think about staying?
Oh yeah, they offered me $10,000 to stick around for another 4 years, but me and the military didn't get along. I kept being busted in rank because I used to get in trouble during liberty hours, just partying too much.
How long were those liberty hours?
Sometimes we'd gone for the weekend. Mostly, you get off the ship at say 4 in the afternoon. You got to be back by midnight, something like that, But
So if you could relive any moment in the war or when you were overseas, what would it be?
I kind of enjoyed the parachuting, jumping out of an aircraft. I absolutely loved it. It's pretty thrilling. And diving was fun. Demolition was fun. And the thing was, you got $55 extra a month for doing hazardous duty, and all 3 of those were hazardous duty. But they only gave you 2 hazardous duty maximum. So I got an extra $110 a month to play with demolition, or dive, or
So, when you were overseas, what did you guys demolish?
well, we sunk a ship once, an old destroyer. We put, I think, 250 pounds in each engine room, and the Navy was firing on it, and then helicopters coming by taking videos of the damage, the bullets and shells that they had used firing on this destroyer, and then when they ran out, they couldn't sink it, so we had put these special charges on, and on a time delay, the charges went off and cranked, and the baby just went down. And one time we actually did a 2-ton blast down, you've heard of Guantanamo Bay?
Yes.
Down in Cuba. Every year they send the SEAL teams now down to Guantanamo Bay, and they have the main harbor, but then the military always has a backup. So the officers' beach was full of coral, and we did a 2-ton blast, 4,000 pounds of C4. We cranked that off. That was pretty cool.
Would you consider yourself like a thrill seeker?
Yeah. I was.
Um. So what happened when you came home? Like, what was everyone's?
Well, it was demoralizing. I remember coming home on leave once, right out of boot camp. I had my regular Navy. I was regular Navy at the time. I went up to the square. I lived in South Braintree. I lived in South Braintree. I went up to the square. This was like 1968. There's a lot of anti-war stuff. I went up to the square where I hung out with my friends in my dress uniform, and everybody laughed at me. I found that pretty. It pissed me off.
What was your reaction to that?
It pissed me off.
Um.
I never wore my uniform again during Liberty hours in my hometown.
How'd that make you feel being so, like?
It was a joke. Just like some people just don't get it. You know, the country was technically at war. Was trying to stop communism. A lot of people don't realize that communism was spreading throughout the world so hard. I mean, Italy was communist. A lot of people don't realize like 20 countries went communist, and we were trying to stop the spread of communism, and that's what it was all about.
What are your thoughts on the war itself in Vietnam? Like,
That's pretty much for the same thing. Just we were trying to stop the spread of communism. It was technically a civil war there but it was the Russians were backing the North Vietnamese and we were backing the South Vietnamese. So it was the two superpowers behind it. But it's tough. It's a tough thing. You don't. Do you want the entire world to go communist? I don't. You know, just everybody being told how to, what they're going to do for a living and everything. Not me. I believe in the free world, and that's why a lot of people died fighting. During World War II, if you didn't have all these veterans from the United States, we pretty much saved the goddamn world because Germany and Japs were taking over the world. Well, finally, we jumped in after the Japs bombed us, and we'd be speaking German if the United States didn't jump into the war. And they were going. It was a badass outfit.
How'd your family feel about you going?
In the service?
Yes.
Oh, they missed me, of course. And the thing was, my oldest sister got married the same year. My older brother died that year, and I went away. So out of 7 children, 3 of us were gone that year. So that was tough for my parents. But my father was in the Navy. He served during World War II. He was aviation's machinist mate. And he did his part. He was one of 7 brothers, and 2 of his other brothers, one was in the Army, and the other one, I think, was in the Navy. So they did their part.
Trying to find more questions. So you said that. So, did you feel like you were like an outcast when you came home?
No, because I hung out with guys that had served. My friends, the guys I grew up with, they were like hippies, and the friends that I served with, my best man was an Army Ranger, and he got shot twice in Vietnam. So I hung out with my veterans friends, but I see what you're saying by an outcast, because not everybody believed in it, and that's like I said, I have really deep thoughts about that. Like the ones that went up to Canada and screwed when they were supposed to go in, they got drafted. They had a draft back then where everybody had to go in, and some of these guys just booked it and went up to Canada, and that ticks me off, because I lost 4 years of my life serving,
Yeah.
but I loved the time I did, but it's also set me behind everybody else. All these other guys who are working and saving money to buy a home and everything. I'm 4 years behind the 8 ball. You don't make crap in the military.
Do you feel any like hatred towards the Vietnamese?
No.
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 What about the war itself? How the United States came in?
The way we came in, that's another tricky question, because people say that we were set up, that it was propaganda. But I wasn't there. Nobody really knows the whole truth. we had a ship that was fired upon by the North Vietnamese in the Gulf of Tonkin, and that was a pretty critical thing. And they're saying that we went in there and antagonized them, whether it's true or not, I don't know, I wasn't there.
Did you ever sink any ships?
I sunk the destroyer. We always practiced putting limpet mines on the, during training, we'd swim under these huge ships and simulate putting limpet mines on there.
Did you ever do it to like a northern Vietnamese ship, like in real life? Like,
No, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't in Vietnam. I was, but I did, we did sink that one American destroyer, and we did blow a lot of demolitions. That's why I go to the reunions every 5 years, and a lot of the guys are hard of hearing, and it's all from all the demolitions that we blew.
so, when you were away, did you feel like you missed out?
Oh yeah, definitely. You miss your friends, but then after you come back, you realize they haven't done anything. And here you are, you're traveling to the entire world. I went to France, Rome, Turkey, Greece. You know, I was seeing the world, and my buddies were still back home picking their nose. You know.
Did you feel that sense of accomplishment once you come home, like you had done something?
Oh, absolutely. I would, being a member of the SEAL teams, UDT SEAL teams, is one of the top things on the planet. To this day, a lot of guys I go to a bar and they find out I'm an ex-Navy SEAL. They'll buy me a beer or something. Just it's crazy. Because there weren't too many. Back then, during Vietnam, there was only 220 SEALs. 110 on the East Coast, 110 on the West Coast. SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2. But I was with the UDT teams, and we had 110 on each team. So technically, there was 310 on each coast with the UDT and the SEALs. Nowadays, it's like 5,000 SEALs.
So during your basic training, how many people went in and how many people came out?
Oh yeah, I've got a shirt over there. I think it's let me grab this shirt here. A buddy of mine, I go to the reunions, he had these shirts printed up. And it says, Underwater Demolition Team Training 6903, convened on September 8th, 1969. Graduated December 1969. The initial enrollment was 18 officers and 93 enlisted volunteers. After 16 weeks of training, including a Hell Week, there was still standing tall 10 officers and 22 enlisted men. The attrition rate for Class 6903 was 72%. Graduates were transferred to duty in Underwater Demolition Teams 21 and 22 or SEAL Team 2. Further training was continued at Naval Underwater Swimming School, Key West, Florida, and at Parachute Jumping School, Fort Benning, Georgia. And this is the T-shirt that my buddy made up. It's pretty cool. I was Class 47, but they called it back then 6903. It was 1969, the third class.
So, Hell Week, what was that?
That was something that, after doing it, I said to myself, I wouldn't do that again for $1 million. We were up from Sunday night midnight until Friday late afternoon, and we were pretty much up. I got 2 hours sleep the entire week. We did, you name it, just we were on the go. Yeah, we did an 18-mile run, the first 8 miles up and over sand dunes. That's where we lost most of the guys. That was like Wednesday. But it was swimming with towels. During regular training, you just swim, but in Hell Week, you swim with wet towels in each hand, or these 2.5 gallon buckets on each hand. You had to swim from one end of the deep end of the pool to the other. And this one guy, Kerry Heinrich, the guy that got 26 holes in him, he kept dropping the buckets. And they said, you do it again, we're going to tie them to your hands. He dropped them again, they tied the buckets to his hands. He knew he was going to sink, so he went to the bottom, walked across the bottom, and then kicked. And they said, we didn't say how to do it, just do it. So they let him fly.
How did you fare during that? Like, how did you come out?
I was the third fastest swimmer in the class. I was a good runner, but I didn't have the upper body strength, the arm strength. But there was no way it even entered. I mean, I was thinking of quitting. But I never really was going to quit. Just there was no way. Let me rephrase that. I didn't think of quitting. Just it wasn't going to happen, no matter how bad it was. And they used to break. We had to break the ice, lie in the ice, and do flutter kicks. And it was just amazing watching people drop. Like when we got 2 compliments during the entire training. The instructor, I forget his name, Spencer. He said, at least you had the guts to try out for it. He said, but look to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, look behind you. Only one of you is going to be left. Pretty much 1 in 5. So it's just pretty tough training.
Did you feel that sense of that even greater accomplishment once you came out?
Once I finished Hell Week, I knew they couldn't break me. There was nothing they could do to break me, so I knew I would graduate. That was pretty amazing. Just it was tough. It was the toughest thing I ever did in my life. Then we had later on in training we did drown proofing. I have some photos in there where they tie your hands and feet together, tie your hands behind your back. You have to swim down the length of the pool, all the way back, the 50-meter pool. Do 20 bobs, then do a forward somersault, and then the ass kicker do a reverse somersault where you definitely get water up your nose, and then you get out. And I was in the first group, so I passed. And once I passed, I went down to the barracks and I got my camera because I knew there was a couple of guys that were going to have trouble. And I have photos of guys that actually drowned.
Did you have any friends in the class, prior to?
I got to training a little bit ahead of everybody else, and so there was 7 of us, and we called ourselves the Magnificent Seven. And we, out of those 7 guys, I think 4 of us made it, so it was pretty. And one of the guys, Ron Price, he was on a medical drop. He had been in a previous class. He had a medical issue during Hell Week. So he got dropped into my class, so he knew what we had to do. So when I showed up early for this training, before training even started, I was just in the barracks, in transition. He was telling us that we got to run every single night, go and run up and over the sand dunes. So that's what we started doing, and it was a killer. But that got me ready.
Do you think you could have done it without his help? If you had no prior knowledge of it?
I don't know. That's a tough question because I think it was instrumental that we got there a little early and got into really good shape. Because I was in the regular fleet beforehand. I was an aviation electronics technician, so I didn't really work out a lot. But when I took the test twice. I took the test at boot camp, and again I came first in the run and first in the swim. But in boot camp, they told me I got my Class A electronics school, and I figured, hell, I'll probably never make it through that BUDS training. So I took the Class A electronics school, and once I went to the Class A electronics school, as I was about to graduate, they came by recruiting down in Memphis again and again. I came first in the run, first in the swim, and but I couldn't do this. I think you had to do 6 chin-ups. The officer in charge said, I'm going to pass you, but you better be able to do 6 chin-ups by the time you get to training. Otherwise, I'm going to personally mess you up. And he didn't use those words. And he was a big boy. So I could do 8 by the time I got to training.
So, now, do you have, for any of the people that are serving now, would you ever want to go back and see how it has changed?
Oh, absolutely. I still read the books. I'm reading a book right now, I think called The Sniper. The guy that taught
Chris Kyle.
The guy that taught Chris Kyle. It's out in my van right now. The Red Circle. This guy was that's the name of the book, and I compared notes about we did at the end of our training. We did an 8-mile swim, and I don't hear any reference to these guys doing 8-mile swims. And they had medics traveling around with them. We didn't have medics going around with us. When we dropped, they ended up taking them back, and then the medic would check them out. But ours was pretty intense. But then there's comparisons. When we go to the reunions, you hear stories about. There was one class where only one guy graduated. There was one class where nobody graduated. So you don't know how bad each class is. And I could imagine that a winter class is the worst class because freezing's bad. It hurts.
So I think our time is up. Thank you so much for having the interview.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was great.
Yeah.
All right,
So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll show you a couple of photos here.